Good evening and thank you for joining us tonight. What you're about to hear goes far beyond a courtroom drama. This is a saga of power, privilege, and alleged betrayal that has captivated a nation. Tonight, we bring you the unfolding story of Sean Combs, known globally as Puff Daddy, Diddy, or simply Diddy, whose life and legacy now hang in the balance as a federal jury decides whether his entourage was nothing more than devoted staff or the engine of a decades-long criminal enterprise. For more than 2 decades, Combs has built an empire at the intersection of music, fashion, and media, bringing a legion of employees beneath his wing. From personal assistants and bodyguards to household staff and corporate supervisors, the man-born Sean John Combs has relied on a retinue that some see as typical for someone of his stature. But prosecutors tell a damning story. They say this: network of aides did far more than refill champagne bottles or orchestrate road logistics. According to the government, Combs' so-called entourage served as operatives in an alleged racketeering conspiracy, facilitating drug-fueled sexual exploitation, covering up violent assaults, and even coordinating bribery schemes to quash. Incriminating evidence. Jury selection for this sprawling trial began earlier this week in a Manhattan federal court. Over the coming months, a 12-member panel will sift through allegations stretching back to 2004. 2 decades worth of arrests, indiscretions, and prosecutors assert outright crimes. Those allegations include kidnapping, arson, forced labor, obstruction of justice, drug violations, sex trafficking, and more. If the jury convicts Combs on the racketeering charges alone, he could face life in prison under the RICO statutes originally drafted to dismantle organized crime families in the 1970s. But let us be clear, this trial is no mere reenactment of mafia tales. It implicates one of the best-known figures in modern entertainment. It asks the jury, and asks all of us to consider, was Combs the benevolent boss of a devoted staff, or did he orchestrate a calculated, coordinated criminal enterprise? As the case unfolds, we will take you behind closed doors and beyond the headlines to understand the stakes, the evidence, and the lives upended by this landmark prosecution. At the heart of the government's case is the argument that Combs' employees did more than attend to his day-to-day needs. Prosecutors say personal assistants procured and distributed illegal narcotics ahead of what they describe as drug-fueled coercive sex marathons. Bodyguards and security personnel set up hotel rooms where Combs allegedly forced women, sometimes recruited via payments or arrangements with male escorts, into sexual encounters. When Combs became violent, prosecutors contend his staffers managed the aftermath. They treated injuries, bribed witnesses, and hid victims from public view until their bodies no longer bore marks of assault. Court filings outline this alleged scheme with chilling detail. In one notable instance, prosecutors describe how Combs' team acted in concert after an assault, arranging medical care for a victim, covering up evidence, and silencing potential whistleblowers. These employees, the government argues, formed the core of a criminal enterprise that enabled Combs' alleged pattern of abuse and violence. The charges paint a gallery of harrowing incidents. In 2011, Combs is accused of orchestrating a break-in at a rival's home, with accomplices later torching the victim's car via Molotov cocktail. Investigators claim Combs' higher-ranking staffers conspired in that violent episode, transporting the incendiary devices and communicating with one another to coordinate the attack. Evidence for these claims includes surveillance footage, financial records, and testimony from cooperating witnesses, some of whom once served as Combs' household staff. Central to the government's argument is Combs' former longtime girlfriend, singer Casandra Ventura, known professionally as Cassie, who filed a civil suit against him in 2023. Ventura is poised to be the trial's star witness, recounting graphic details of what prosecutors label freak-off sessions, extended sexual encounters directed and filmed by Combs, sometimes involving hired male escorts. Ventura alleges that Combs abused her physically and sexually over years, and that she endured beatings in hotel hallways, epithets that prosecutors say cross the threshold into sex trafficking. Recordings and text messages the government promises will demonstrate how Combs' team facilitated these encounters and protected him afterward. Alongside Ventura, the prosecution anticipates calling former employees turned witnesses. A personal chef who claims she suffered physical abuse and hair loss from workplace stress, assistants who allege forced labor under threat, and housekeepers who describe bribes paid to hotel security to suppress surveillance footage. Text communications and voice recordings, according to court filings, illustrate how Combs' aides coordinated bribes, some in six-figure sums, to cover up violent incidents and maintain his untarnished public image. The defense rejects these accusations in totality. Combs' lawyers argue that his relationships with Ventura and other women were consensual, part of an adult lifestyle that included swingers and open arrangements. They maintain that the alleged violence stemmed from personal disputes over fidelity, not from criminal motives or trafficking schemes. As for the RICO charges, the defense contends the government has twisted the broad racketeering statute to apply to Combs' everyday adult life, transforming birthday parties, fashion shows, and recording sessions into evidence of an organized crime network. As the trial proceeds, jurors will face a stark choice. Do they see a legitimate boss surrounded by loyal staff fulfilling his eccentric demands? Or do they see a kingpin at the helm of a criminal enterprise, whose every whim dragged his employees into a conspiracy of illegal acts? The answer will hinge on witness credibility, the weight of documentary evidence, and the jurors' willingness to accept that a figure as iconic as Sean Combs could be more gangster than mogul. The case against Combs spotlights the expanding use of RICO laws beyond their mafia roots. While originally designed to break the power of organized crime families, the statute has in recent years been wielded against Wall Street figures, pharmaceutical executives, street gangs, and even members of sex cults. High-profile prosecutions of R. Kelly and NXIVM leader Keith Raniere set a precedent for charging powerful men accused of sexual exploitation under RICO, presenting their staffs not as innocent bystanders, but as co-conspirators. Legal scholars caution that RICO's sweep can edge into the territory of sensational overreach. By bundling decades of allegations into a single conspiracy, prosecutors can bypass statutes of limitations on individual crimes, presenting jurors with a decade-spanning narrative unmoored from traditional evidentiary constraints. Critics argue this places an unfair burden on defendants to respond to long-ago incidents where memories fade and documents vanish. In Combs' case, this means nearly 20 years of allegations, from arson and bribery to drug distribution and sexual coercion, will be presented as evidence of a single continuous enterprise. Combs' defense team argues that this approach lacks fairness, likening it to charging someone with every parking ticket they've ever received, rather than focusing on discrete offenses within the statute of limitations. But prosecutors counter that RICO's strength lies in its ability to depict the full scope of an alleged criminal enterprise. They assert that Combs' staff used various means, some lawful, many not, to carry out a systematic scheme that enabled sexual exploitation and covered up violent crimes. For the government, the choice to try Combs as a racketeering kingpin represents both a precedent-setting moment and a practical necessity to hold him accountable for years of alleged wrongdoing. Beyond the legal and procedural complexities, the trial has ignited a broader cultural debate. Combs is not just any celebrity. He helped define the urban music landscape of the 1990s and 2000s, launching stars from Notorious B.I.G. to Mary J. Blige, and creating a lifestyle brand that spanned vodka, clothing, and fragrance. His persona of affluence and charisma made him a symbol of aspiration for millions. Now, that persona is at risk of unraveling. If the jury convicts Combs as a RICO kingpin, it could upend the careers of others in his orbit. The question of whether his employees will face charges remains unsettled. Prosecutors have yet to name co-conspirators, leaving open the possibility that some of Combs' inner circle may see indictments or trial testimony. For the wider entertainment industry, the verdict could redefine the boundaries between acceptable support staff duties and criminal complicity. Critics of the trial argue that it dramatizes sensational allegations for headlines, potentially overshadowing the innately complex issues at play, the nature of consent in relationships involving power imbalances, the role of staff in managing public images, and the evolution of federal statutes intended for organized crime. Yet for many, the prominence of Combs' case underscores the imperative to hold influential figures to account, regardless of their wealth or status. As closing arguments loom several months hence, the eyes of the world remain fixed on the federal courthouse in Manhattan. Will Sean Combs' decades-long career in music and entrepreneurship be judged as evidence of an extraordinary partnership between a mogul and his staff, or as proof of a sprawling criminal conspiracy? The jury's decision will echo far beyond the courtroom, resonating in corridors of power, boardrooms of record labels, and the broader discourse on celebrity accountability. Tonight, as the jury continues its deliberations, we'll bring you every development, witness testimonies, courtroom exchanges, and the unfolding legal strategy on both sides. We will analyze the implications for RICO jurisprudence, for the non-Me Too era's approach to sexual misconduct, and for the future of reality-bending trials that test the limits of long-established laws. This story is not just about Sean Combs. It's about the intersection of fame, power, and the rule of law in 21st century America. It's about whether the promises of justice can withstand the gravitational pull of wealth and influence. And it's about the jury, ordinary citizens tasked with deciding one of the most consequential celebrity cases of our time. Stay with us as we continue to follow this landmark trial, bringing you exclusive insights, expert commentary, and on-the-ground reporting. For now, we leave you with this. No matter the outcome, the case of Sean Combs will test our faith in the justice system, reshape our understanding of celebrity complicity, and remind us that even the most luminous stars can cast long shadows.